Hey guys, so a couple of days ago, we finally got leaks about Flin's kit, who was one of the new Nod-Krai characters appearing in 6.0. So, in this video, I'll be going over his V1 Beta kits, his new and ideal artifact set, and what teams he'd be good in. Also, considering that this is the version 1 beta, keep in mind that a lot of things will change in the upcoming weeks before his release, so take everything with a grain of salt and be aware that his kits, and thus his performance, is still in development. Starting off with this kit, for his basic attacks, they don't really do anything other than just look really cool. For his skill, he loses the ability to do plunge attacks and enhances these really cool basic attacks even more by infusing them with electro that cannot be overridden, so your C6 Bennett won't be an issue. After using his skill, he also replaces his skill with another skill which does a burst of electro damage and converts his ultimates into another ultimate for 6 seconds, similarly to Varisa or Skirk. For this other ultimate, it mentions a new Nod-Krai mechanic known as Moon Sign. It can be leveled up to 2 times, 1 time for every Nod-Krai character that is on the team, which Flins is, meaning that Flins will always have his Moon Sign at level 1, aka at the Nascent Gleam level. The second ultimate can be used at any time during his electro-infused normal attack combos, and if the Moon Sign is of the Ascendant Gleam level, aka the second level, the Moon Sign states that if there are Lunar-Charged reactions nearby, he will do an additional instance of damage when using his second ultimate. For his regular ultimate, that being the ultimate that he normally have when not using his second skill, that is activated by his normal skill, he does an instance of electro damage, then 3 more instances after a short delay, similarly to Yamiko. And if the Moon Sign is of the Ascendant Gleam level, aka level 2, the Moon Sign states that if there are lunar charged clouds nearby, he does 2 additional instances of electro damage. For his passive, you probably already have an idea of what it is since I've already mentioned it a couple of times. His passive states that electro charged reactions are converted into lunar charge reaction, and that for every 100 attack that Flins has, it increases the lunar charge reactions' base damage by 0.7% up to a maximum of 14%, which is not just similar but exactly like Inefas' passive. This same passive is also the passive that allows for him to increase the Moon Sign level by 1, aka he allows for the Moon Sign to always be at the Nascent Gleam level, which is something that only Nod-Krai characters do, like Flins. For his other passive, it's also similar to Inefas' other passive in where she increases the elemental mastery of the active character based off of her attack, except that for Flins, it's backwards and it's a selfish version of it. This passive states that Flins' elemental mastery is increased by 8% of his attack and that the maximum increase obtainable this way is 160. For his other passive, it states that Flins will gain a corresponding buff effect based on the party's moon sign. If the party's moon sign is at the Ascendant Gleam level, aka level 2, lunar charge reactions triggered by Flins will deal an additional 20% damage. Anyways, with this kit out of the way, it seems to me like Flins will be heavily dependent on his moon sign level, which will need to be increased by having to need another Nod-Krai character, which at the time of his release, with the Nefa having far better damage than other electro sub DPS like Fischl or Auroron in lunar charge teams, and the Aino surprisingly being better than Furina and Yelan even at C0 in lunar charge team. Another thing Flins will heavily be dependent on is going to be lunar charged reactions, because it seems like his entire existence is based off of lunar charge. Also, it seems like his first ultimate, that being the ultimate that doesn't require for you to use both of his skills, does less damage than his second ultimate when doing his electro infused normal attacks. So to me, it seems like his first ultimate will either let him act as a nuke DPS of sorts, with the second ultimate allowing him to do a lot more damage when using him as a main DPS, similarly to Skirk, or his first ultimate will simply be used after your allies apply Hydro, and before all of your other allies use their skills and ultimates, so that you can switch onto him after you finish the majority of your rotation, and play him as a main DPS, in where you'll utilize this second ultimate during your normal attack combos until your rotation ends. Anyways, it seems as if even though he'll be restricted to Nod-Krai teams and lunar charge teams, similarly to the direction that they took with Escoffier and Skirk with freeze teams, he'll still be a really powerful DPS on par with the likes of later Natlan units like Varisa and Skirk. And like I said, keep in mind that he does still have potential to get better. Now that we've gone through his kit and playstyle, I'd like to talk about his new artifact set that contributes to this Nod-Krai team restriction. His new artifact set states that for the 2-piece bonus effect, the equipper's elemental mastery is increased by 80, which is yet another really good 2-piece EM boost that you can use to mix and match 2-piece bonus sets. But for the 4-piece bonus effect, it states that when party members trigger moon glare reactions, aka either lunar bloom or lunar charge, if the equipping character is on field, which Flins probably will be since he is an on-field main DPS, the equipping character will gain the Gleaming Moon effect for 4 seconds, in where this effect will increase the equipper's crit rate by 15% if the moon sign is of the Nascent Gleam level, which again, it will always be, but it increases the crit rate by an additional 15% if the moon sign is of the Ascendant Gleam level, which again requires for Flins or any other Nod-Krai character to utilize another Nod-Krai character. It also states that all party members' moon glare reactions' damage is increased by 10% for each different Gleaming Moon effect that the party members have, and that this effect can be triggered by the equipping character even when they're off field, meaning that for every character that contributed to the Lunar-Charged reaction, or any lunar reaction for that matter, that reaction's damage is increased by 10% up to 40%. Anyways, with the artifact description out of the way, it seems to me like this artifact set is once again promoting restrictive teams and kits, which only makes sense since this artifact is for only a couple of characters that only work with one reaction. But I just think it's a shame how much this set expresses the restrictiveness of Nod-Krai characters as kits, since unless you have another Nod-Krai character, your moon sign level won't be at the Ascendant Gleam level and you'll be missing out on an extra 15% crit rate, while Natlin units get to have 40% crit rate practically for free, and Fontaine units get to have 36% crit rate practically for free as well. So because of this restrictiveness, you can probably already tell how many little teams he has, considering that all of his teams are based off of Lunar-Charged reaction-based teams. Thus, for his teams, he doesn't have a variety of teams, but rather a couple of different teammates that you can choose from. Since Flins is a Lunar-Charged main DPS, he's gonna want a Hydro Applicator, an Elemental Mastery booster, an Attack booster, a Resistance Shredder, and an Electro Applicator, in which at least one character that is fulfilling any of these roles should also be a Nod-Krai character. So for his Nod-Krai teammates, like I said, he's only gonna have Inefa, who is also going to act as his best Electro Applicator, and Aino, who is going to act as his best Hydro support as well, at least until Colombina releases. For other Hydro supports who are way better at applying Hydro, you can go for Yelan, Furina, or Chinchou, in which all the damage bonuses from Furina and Yelan will pretty much go to waste because Lunar Charge doesn't scale off of damage bonuses. For his Elemental Mastery booster, Sucrose is pretty much the only character who can do this without affecting the Lunar Charged reaction. For his attack booster, Bennett will obviously be the best, with Ayansan being really bad since Flins doesn't move around a lot. For his Resistance Shredder, Cylonen, Kazuha, and Zhongli would all be really good since Cylonen is able to shred 2 elements at once, which in a Lunar Charged based team is all you need, and Kazuha will be extremely good at crowd control and elemental application, with Zhongli offering an incredibly powerful shield that will help Flins tremendously, considering that he's a normal attack main DPS without powerful interruption resistance. For his Electro Applicator, again, he is extremely dependent on Inefa, but for alternatives, you can run either Fischl or Auroron, but keep in mind that if you run Auroron, the Cinder City set will have little to no effect, because again, Lunar Charge reactions don't scale off of damage bonuses. In conclusion, if you want to pull Flins, just be aware that you'll miss out on a lot of DPS without having Nod-Krai characters like Inefa, Colombina, who is 4 patches away, or Aino, who is a 4-star that nobody really cares for. Also, be aware about Flins' Lunar Charged main DPS playstyle, who is restricted to only one elemental reaction based team with only a couple of teammate options. So if you're fine with these restrictions, pulling for Flins will be completely fine from a meta standard, since his DPS is standard in terms of the power creep DPS we've been getting recently with Skirk and Verisa. Although, do keep in mind that there is a slight difference in DPS between him and Verisa, with Verisa currently doing a bit more damage than his best teams when she is run in overload comps. Regardless, if you've enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. If you have anything to share, please leave it down in the comments below. I would greatly appreciate it. Goodbye.